Frozen beers. Frozen beers. So what level are you at in Skyrim now?
I think still 18. I was playing a little bit of Halo 2 this past weekend.
Oh, that's right. You said that.
Yeah, I think I got through 5 missions on Halo 2. Dude, that was so much fun. Love Halo 2.
That's like 4 hours.
Yeah, give or take. Alright, I'm ready if you're ready. Keep this going.
Let's do it up, man. Let's do it up.
Let's do it. Oh, let's do it. Oh, let's do it. Alright, I'm going to switch over and we'll start.
I bet.
What's going on, everybody? Bros and Beers here, live November 13th. It's a Wednesday. We're going to do some trade talk tonight. So we're going to give you some players that you should be trading for and trading away based on what's happened recently and how their playoff schedules are going to be like. Ron, how you doing?
Doing good. It's hump day, middle of the week. 3 out of 5 days are over. 2 more days till we got Friday night with the bros. Talking more football. Yeah, we're talking trades. One of the most fun things to do in fantasy. Trading players, getting players back. So yeah, looking forward to that. How you doing? How you doing?
How you doing? I'm doing good. I mean, every day is a good day.
Good.
Especially when we're talking football, and the best part about fantasy football is trades. I made a trade tonight already. So
Yeah.
in our keeper league.
You and I made a trade last night.
Yeah, we've made a couple of trades this year.
We have. It's been work. We've been doing work.
3. I think we've made 3 trades. We did the trade for Nico, trade for Nix, and then the trade for Goff.
Yeah, and then this last one we just did.
That's right, for Dobbins.
For 4, so 4 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, trading.
But
So yeah.
I'm ready to get into it. You ready to get started?
Yeah, basically, let's let them know like what the gist is. Like, we're gonna be telling you like players to trade for. Basically, we're just thinking about players that you could probably buy low and have good playoff schedules, because a big thing in fantasy, as we know, is matchups in playoffs and making sure that your top guys are going to be playing well in the playoffs. Because if they don't, then what's the point of even making the playoffs if you're just going to get crapped on,
No, we want to win championships.
Absolutely. But yeah, players to trade for, so buy low players, and then players to trade away that you could maybe like sell high on, and maybe swap a couple players that are on our lists here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so just to start us off, first player you should be trading for, and he might be a little bit more difficult to get because he's already had a great season, and that's Baker Mayfield. Should be getting Mike Evans after his bye, and plain and simple, his playoff schedule is phenomenal. First week 15, he plays against Chargers, 23rd overall in fantasy points given, which isn't great. And then he plays Dallas, who gives up the 4th most points, and then Carolina, who gives up the 6th most points. So yeah, if you can get Baker Mayfield for even relatively cheap, go out and get him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and against Los Angeles and Dallas, they are away games, but those are both indoor stadiums, so that should benefit him greatly being able to play indoors. And then Carolina's just bad, so
Yeah, play anyone
hopefully
against them.
getting his top weapon back, and he's already been playing super well even without Evans and Godwin this year. So
Who's the next player on the list that we want to talk about, Ron?
our next player we got on the list is Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has been playing pretty well this year. One thing we just talked about before we started was that he's got two wide receivers that are top 10 wide receivers so far this year. So he's been playing pretty well. And he's got a pretty favorable playoff schedule coming up against Las Vegas, New York Giants, and the Washington Commanders. Las Vegas is an away game, another indoor game. Giants is home, so that's another indoor game, and then Washington is an away game, so Washington can be kind of iffy with weather and stuff like that, but Washington's kind of a middling defense, and they have been susceptible to the pass this year, so Kirk Cousins has a pretty favorable playoff matchup and has a bye, I believe it was week 12, so he gets it's a good spot for a bye to kind of get fresh and hopefully get some players healthy on that team. I know Drake London is banged up right now, but yeah, Kirk Cousins is a good guy to go for.
Yeah, if you got somebody that's not on bye and has a terrible playoff schedule, that team might only be looking towards like, shoot, I got him on bye. I need a quarterback now. He also plays against Denver this week, so not a great matchup. So if you can, we'll give you some other players you can maybe trade away. But yeah, Kirk Cousins is a great buy option. Even though it's not low, he's still a good buy.
Yeah.
Next on the list is Jordan Love. He's somebody we don't really like because he plays for the Packers. He has had two really rough games in a row, and he plays Chicago this week. So somebody might be like freaking out or panicking on him, but it doesn't matter. It's Jordan Love. In the playoffs, he plays against Seattle, New Orleans, and Minnesota. Not like phenomenal matchups. Seattle gives up the 12th most points, New Orleans gives up the 24th most points, and then Minnesota gives up the 20th most points to quarterbacks. But he'll be fine. I mean, it's Jordan Love. He'll have all of his weapons back and fully healthy, and they'll be in the playoff hunt, so they're going to have to rely on his shoulders to win some games.
Yeah. And they're coming off a bye last week, so he's coming back, and it's reported that he's pretty much fully healthy after that groin injury, so I think Jaden Reed, Watson, all those guys are all healthy now too, and Tucker Kraft coming on, and a couple of indoor games actually at Seattle versus New Orleans, and then at Minnesota. So the last one's indoor, but he plays in Green Bay, so they're used to playing out in the weather anyway. So
yeah, yep.
Next guy. So those are the three quarterbacks we have to trade for, and then we'll switch gears to a few running. Well, we actually have 4 running backs.
Yep.
First one we got Chuba Hubbard. He's on bye this week, which I think is coming at a good time for him because it looked like he last Sunday when they were in Germany, looked like he kind of tweaked his knee a little bit. He stayed in, but I think having the bye week is good for him. They're probably going to get Jonathan Brooks back, so people might be worried about what kind of committee they're going to have with him, but I still think with Hubbard playing so well that there's no need to rush Brooks back into any kind of heavy workload. And I think the plan is that they want to use both of them for the foreseeable future anyways. But for the playoff schedule for Chuba, they play Dallas. Let me just see.
Dallas, Arizona, and Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Dallas, Arizona, and Tampa Bay. And I want to see. They are home versus Dallas, home versus Arizona, and then at Tampa Bay. So all outdoor games, which typically bodes well for running backs in case there's any weather. Then usually they're going to be running the ball a little bit more, and he's been getting a lot of work regardless. And yeah, Dallas hasn't proven to be a good team. Arizona's been pretty inconsistent. Tampa Bay is not a very good defense, but a good offense, and that could be a game where he's getting a lot of catches out of the backfield too. But Chuba Hubbard, I think, has been one of the biggest surprises this year. And if someone is worried about him losing some work to Brooks, it could be a good player to buy for a playoff run. Really good matchup. So,
yeah, as far as fantasy points given up, Dallas has given up the fourth most fantasy points. Arizona's given up the ninth, and then Tampa Bay has given up the eighth most. So very friendly matchups for Hubbard in the
going against
in the playoffs.
Going against defenses that are top 10 and that, so very good matchups.
Yeah. The next player that you definitely need to buy, which Ron just bought off me because I'm selling for next year. That's J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards is kind of just hanging around every week. I don't think it really matters, but J.K. Dobbins owner could be fearful that Gus Edwards is going to cut more into that time. He's not a very good running back. Plain and simple, though, their playoff schedule is great. They play against Tampa Bay, Denver, and New England, which is 8th, 15th, and 7th, respectively, for most points given up. Yeah, so great playoff schedule, and somebody could be... he also didn't have a great game last week, so now is the perfect time to buy low on him. Yep. Just to give you an example, Ron and I did a 3-round pick swap. He got Dobbins, I got Jonathan Brooks. So something along the lines of that is a pretty even trade.
Yeah, and I think even with Gus Edwards back, that could keep Dobbins more fresh, because we did see early in the season when Edwards was healthy and was playing, Dobbins was a lot more efficient with his touches and actually had like two of his top 3 games this year were with Edwards actually healthy. So
that's true.
Might actually work in his favor.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a bell cow. So
right. But yeah, that's kind of what we saw with Tony Pollard a few years ago when he was like fresh for every touch. He's 5-6 yards a touch, and just a lot more efficient. So maybe, he's been a little more consistent with Edwards out and getting the ball more, but maybe with Edwards back, he might be a little more efficient with his touches on top of having really good matchups through the playoffs. So. Next running back we have is Jonathan Taylor. Been a little bit slower coming back from that ankle injury, so it could be good time to buy low for him. I don't think I know against Minnesota he didn't have a great game. So yeah, hasn't been too hot coming back from that injury. They got Richardson, who will probably be starting the rest of the year. And, that could maybe scare some people away, but it's probably just going to mean more touches for him just to get him the ball and see what he can do. And he's got a pretty favorable matchups the rest of the year. Going against Denver, who gives up the 15th most points, Tennessee, who gives up the 12th, and the New York Giants, who give up the 14th. All 3 of those teams, too, Denver's a middle-of-the-pack team, but Tennessee and New York haven't been playing super well this year, so it could be a game the Colts get up and just need to run clock out and just feed Taylor and see what he can do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next up on our list is Tyrone Tracy. He didn't play much at the very beginning of the year. He's a rookie. Been a lot better the past 4 weeks, though. He is on bye, though, so if you got somebody who needs a running back, especially this week, see what you can get for him. I'd be willing to pay almost whatever it takes, just because he's gonna get 20 to 25 touches a week. His playoff schedule is not phenomenal. It's against Baltimore, Atlanta, and Indianapolis, which is 26th, 23rd, and 16th most fantasy points. So not great, but he's the kind of guy that will catch passes. So even if they're down in all 3 games, he's going to be a part of their game plan. in an we should have mentioned all of these rankings are in half-point PPR. So somebody like this, it's not as accurate. He can catch 3 or 4 balls, and that makes a huge difference. So almost, I feel like anybody he plays against, he'll probably get 15 or more points. So plus, now is a good time to buy with that fumble. Like, people could be wary of that. Maybe they could be thinking like maybe Singletary is going to get more playing time. Not worried about it. Go buy a Tyrone Tracy.
He's been getting a lot of volume too, so
Yeah.
I think he's going to continue to get a lot of work.
Yep, I agree.
Moving on to wide receivers, our first one we have actually correlates with one of our quarterbacks we said to buy, Darnell Mooney. He currently is ranked as the 8th wide receiver in PPR fantasy this year. We definitely think we could get him cheaper than London, just because London is kind of that wide receiver one. He's got a bye next week and a prolific offense, so teams might be wary of that. Doesn't have the best matchups, but he's been playing really good this year regardless. He's got Las Vegas, who gives up the 28th most points against wide receivers. New York Giants were the 18th, and Washington was the 14th. Las Vegas and New York are not very good teams, so their numbers are probably skewed by people running the ball more against them. So Darnell Mooney could be a good player to go buy to help you with a playoff run.
Yeah, I tried to buy him this past week, and the guy was like not willing to give him up. But I didn't really send my full offers. So
yeah.
Next guy on the list though is Zay Flowers. They just traded for Deontay Johnson, so as a Zay Flowers owner, you might be fearful that he's going to cut into that. Deontay Johnson is a shell of himself, so I wouldn't really worry about it. Zay Flowers also has his bye still, so if you were in a position where you don't need a victory in Week 14 or you can afford the loss, he's got a pretty good playoff schedule. Playing against the Giants, Pittsburgh, and then the Texans. And the Texans in the championship game is the one that you should be focused on. Giants give up the 18th, Pittsburgh give up 23rd, and then the Texans give up the 7th most fantasy points. If you're in PPR, Zay Flowers is even more valuable because he should catch more balls. So you might be able to get him cheap. He hasn't been fantastic. He's kind of been up and down. We'll give you some players too that you can maybe trade away for him.
Yeah, last wide receiver to trade for before we move on to players to trade away. Malik Neighbors. We've seen what he can do. He's on bye this week, but he's had 4 straight mediocre games. I think this is probably the best time to buy him low. Giants haven't looked very good. Tracy's kind of emerged. Daniel Jones is doing Daniel Jones things. But his playoff schedule is fairly favorable. He's got Baltimore, who gives up the most points to wide receivers, Atlanta, who gives up the 9th, and Indianapolis, who gives up the 12th. All 3 games could be games where New York could find themselves behind early and need to have Danny Dimes start slinging the ball pretty early. So Malik Neighbors, we know how good he is. I think it's only a matter of time before he picks it up again and starts playing like he was early this year.
And there's a chance that they sit Danny Dimes for Drew Lock, which I think would be better for Neighbors.
Yeah, probably would be.
And
Daniel Jones is not good.
This is the week for them to make a change. It's right after a bye. So this
I agree.
I mean, obviously this is the last time you can buy him because most trade deadlines are done after this week. But
right.
Yeah. Let's get on to the
which is why we're doing this video.
Exactly. Let's get on to the players that you should be looking to trade away. Most of these, it's not even necessarily trade high or trade low. We're just looking forward. If you're somebody who is in a good position right now, these players have really bad playoff schedules. So starting with the quarterbacks, it is Jared Goff. It's like one of the worst playoff schedules of any player. Plays against Buffalo, Chicago, and San Francisco. which is 27th last and 22nd in most points given up against quarterbacks. He's going to have all of his weapons, but Detroit, they're just running the ball a ton. He hasn't had to throw a lot, and in those games, I mean, you could argue that he's going to have to throw more, but they just have good pass defenses, so I would try to trade Goff away.
Yeah. Agreed. Next guy we got on here is Brock Purdy. You know, he's been pretty mediocre this year. And I think with McCaffrey back, they're definitely going to want to utilize the best player on that offense, which is McCaffrey. So they could be running the ball a lot more. I know they really didn't use Mason a whole lot, but I think they have two really good running backs that they could use down the stretch here to end the season. But they go up against the Los Angeles Rams, who are give up the 17th most points to quarterbacks, at Miami, who is 31st, and against Detroit, who is 19th. And yeah, it's not the greatest. And, you know, he hasn't really been super good all this year anyways. He's got his, you know, he's without his wide receiver one. 49ers has just been banged up all year. And he might be a good player he could be a sell high guy that you could maybe get somebody else in return, like Kirk Cousins. I think if you offered somebody Brock Purdy for Kirk Cousins, they might think, oh my God, this guy's giving up Brock Purdy, what the heck? But Kirk Cousins has a lot more favorable matchups going into the fantasy playoffs. He's got a healthier offense right now, so that might be a trade that you might be able to swing.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, right now, Purdy has more fantasy points. No. Where's Cousins? They're close. Purdy has, in a 6-point per passing touchdown league, Purdy has 5 more points than Cousins. So they might see that like, oh, this guy's 8th, and this guy's 9th ranked player.
Mm-hmm.
Cousins has a better schedule. So I would make that trade. The last quarterback on our list is Geno Smith. He is missing DK Metcalf, which has hurt his numbers a little bit, but his playoff schedule is just terrible. He's playing against Green Bay, Minnesota, and Chicago, which is 25th, 20th, and last in points given up. They're all NFC teams. They're all 3 teams that'll be in the playoff hunt. I don't think Seattle will be. We'll see. They've been relying on Kenneth Walker more, and if they can get DK Metcalf back, that would help. But I would be looking to trade away Geno Smith for one of the 3 quarterbacks that we had talked about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another guy where if you maybe throw him in an offer to try to get Kirk Cousins, somebody might be like, well, Geno Smith.
Geno, I think, he's behind Cousins, technically.
Okay.
He's the 12th ranked quarterback.
Sure. But maybe Kirk Cousins is somebody's QB2 on their fantasy team. Like, somebody could have Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen as their QB1 and have Kirk Cousins, and maybe you could trade somebody else to try to get Kirk, or, you know,
well, you could always
trade away Geno to try to get somebody else. So
you could always give up Geno and something else for Kirk Cousins.
True.
And I would do that.
Or trade Geno to a QB needy team.
Yes.
To maybe get another player in a position of need. But yeah.
Correct.
Bad matchups. Last championship gaming is against the best defense against quarterbacks, and it's an away game, so good player to trade away.
Mm-hmm.
Switching gears to running backs, our first one is Aaron Jones. He's looked good when he's healthy, but it's the second time this year he's been banged up. He's got a rib injury. I think he could continue to lose more work to Cam Akers just to try to keep him healthy, because we know Minnesota, they're 7-2. They want to, good chance they're going to try to make a playoff run here. And they're probably going to want to keep him as healthy as possible going into the real NFL playoffs. And so I think we're going to see Akers cutting into his work a little bit more. I think he was dominating touches with Chandler because I think Chandler fell out of favor with the coaches for some reason. But now that they have Akers had 13 carries last week. I think we're going to continue to see more of like a 60-40 split with them. Doesn't have the greatest matchups either. Playing against Chicago at home, Seattle, and then Green Bay. There's the 17th, 10th, and 20th ranked teams against running backs, respectively. And with the volume, I think, going down and some tougher matchups, I think Aaron Jones could be a player to trade away to someone that might need a running back.
Yeah, plain and simple. He's hurt already, so if you can get something for him, if you get Tyrone Tracy for him, I would totally do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Next up on the list is DeAndre Swift for the Chicago Bears. He's had a good year. Been kind of inconsistent, though, which is the whole Bears offense. They are switching out their offensive coordinator, which could get some people excited for. It doesn't really matter. It's still the Bears. It's still Caleb Williams. But because of how well he's played all year, and people could be hopeful with a new coach, they could be viewing him highly. In the playoffs, he's got 2 really hard matchups, which is at the Vikings and then home against Detroit. And then in the championship game, he plays against the Seahawks. So 2 out of 3 really bad matchups. But it's just not a great offense to be a part of. So somebody you could sell high on.
Yeah, he's been very boomer bust this year so far, and the games that has played really well in were against bad defenses. So if the matchup isn't favorable for him, he typically hasn't been playing well. So,
well, and that has been in closer games. I wouldn't be surprised against Minnesota and Detroit. They get blown out. They're not going to be running the ball.
Right. Exactly. Our next running back to trade away is Najee Harris. He's currently nursing an ankle injury, and if you've never had an ankle injury before, they can be lingering SOBs, as Nick and I are both victims of many a sprained ankle. We know how that goes. He's had a pretty decent year otherwise.
He's a great
I think he's had 15 or more touches in every game so far this year. Pittsburgh 6-2. They're 6-2. 6-2. So they've been winning a lot of games and using him to kill clock, but the fantasy playoff weeks, they're at Philly 30th against running backs, at Baltimore 26th, and then home against Kansas City, who is 32nd. This might be the worst playoff schedule for any running back in fantasy.
Yeah.
And if he's banged up, you're going to see a little bit more Jaylen Warren, even if Najee does play through it with the matchups as well. Try to get what you can for him. You use Tracy. I think if I could trade away Najee and get Tracy, I would definitely do that. Or even Dobbins. You could. I think if you could do Dobbins for Najee, I would do that in a heartbeat. Absolutely. Any one of the running backs we mentioned, Chuba Hubbard, J.K.,
Tracy.
Jonathan Taylor, Tyrone Tracy, easily I would take any of those 4 over Najee.
Yeah, no, I agree. To start off our wide receivers of players to trade, this one's probably not a big surprise. It's not a great time to sell him. That's CeeDee Lamb for the Dallas Cowboys. It was announced that Dak is out for the rest of the year. Cooper Rush is terrible. His playoff schedule is against Carolina, Tampa Bay, and Philadelphia. And they're not going to, even against Carolina, I don't think they're going to be in any of these games, which is good for him. But if he has a quarterback that throws for 45 yards last week, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter. Carolina gives up the 19th most fantasy points. Tampa Bay is a good matchup, which they give it the 5th most. And then Philadelphia, who they just got dominated by, is the 21st most fantasy points. Whatever you can get for CeeDee Lamb at this point, I would totally trade him for Darnell Mooney. That's crazy to say, because at the beginning of the year you'd be like, what? Like a bum for CeeDee Lamb? Nah, I would do it.
Yeah, and
Malik
CD's
Neighbors,
the type.
I would do it.
CD's the type of player too. With his name is going to carry weight, so you might even be able to
You can maybe get Drake London.
throw
right
him.
now.
You could throw him in a trade and be like, oh, this guy's got Darnell Mooney and Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah.
You could go trade CeeDee Lamb and get 2 of these other players back that we're mentioning as our trade 4, or like J.K. Dobbins and Zay Flowers.
You could.
He could be one of those guys where if like you don't trust him going into the playoffs because you don't think he's gonna be as good without Dak, throw his name out there. People will listen.
Yes. Just start sending offers.
Yeah, it's always good to just send offers, try to gauge what people are thinking, and like with a name, if you start throwing CD's name out there, people might get excited, and you might be able to get more than what you are gonna get from him, in fantasy points. So, moving on to the next one, Brian Thomas. He's had a great rookie year. He's gonna be a great wide receiver for his career, but as far as the rest of the season this year, Trevor Lawrence has already been ruled out this week. Mac Jones is going to start again. There's a possibility that Trevor Lawrence just doesn't play the rest of the year with the Jaguars being so bad. It's a definite possibility that they don't want to risk anything worse. Thomas has been hurt the last few weeks, and he probably has the worst playoff schedule of any wide receiver we have on this list. He is playing the New York Jets, who are 32nd against wide receivers, at Las Vegas, 28th, and then against Tennessee Titans, who are 29th. And if you got Mac Jones throwing you the ball,
Doesn't matter.
not good. They didn't look good against Minnesota last week. Yeah. Any type of like dynasty or keeper league, if you drafted Thomas like in a low round and he's somebody you want to keep, but redraft.
Ship
If
him.
you can get anything for him, now's the time.
We didn't mention him earlier, but I would totally trade Brian Thomas away for Cedric Tillman if I could.
Yeah, I think if you can get, again, Brian Thomas for anybody on this other list, depending on what your position of need may be, it's a good player to trade away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you could do it for Mooney, Flowers, or Neighbors, just because realistically they are like higher, they're ranked higher. But if you could give up Brian Thomas and something else, get one of those 3 wide receivers, I would do. Like, there's nothing wrong with overpaying in fantasy. Like, the thought
Right.
of overpaying has always seemed bad, but it's like if you're giving up somebody who, like Brian Thomas, I don't really want to start him the rest of the year. So if I'm giving up him, who's a bench player, and one of my starters to upgrade a starter, that's a win.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, you could trade Brian Thomas and Najee for Malik Neighbors or Jonathan Taylor or something like that.
I would do it.
Do it.
Yeah. The next player on our list is maybe not a surprise. It's another big name player who was drafted in the top 5 earlier this year. That's Tyreek Hill. He has a torn ligament in his wrist. We never know what's going to happen with Tua. He's always a huge injury risk. And they're probably not going to be in the playoff hunt. So if either one of those guys are hurt, there's no reason to fully unleash them. And like Tyreek Hill might not have another game where he's like, has 150 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
You could have somebody that's really interested in his name, which does speak in fantasy football. His player schedule is not bad, though. It's against Houston, San Francisco, and Cleveland. 2 of those are away, though. Houston gives up the 7th most. San Francisco gives up the 22nd most, and Cleveland gives up the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers. But once again, if you can lure people with his name, I would probably trade Tyreek Hill for any three of the players that we named earlier. So Mooney, Flowers, and Neighbors. He's just been underwhelmed. He's been pretty bad all year.
Even with Tua back the last 3 weeks, he
hasn't gone over.
He's been like
20 points.
He's pretty much been below his floor. The 13.2, 12, and 11.7. And the only reason he scored double digits last week is because he scored a touchdown. Otherwise, he had 3 catches for 16 yards.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely, and Miami's not good this year. If they get another loss or two, they're not going to have anything to play for. They're not going to risk their best players in a season that's lost.
No.
So if they got nothing to play for come fantasy playoffs times against Houston, who's a pretty good team, San Francisco, who's middle of the road, but they're getting some players back, and then Cleveland. Cleveland's not a very good team this year, but who knows what they're gonna do end of the year when you're not playing for anything. So definitely, like you said, a big name to throw around might get people excited, like CeeDee Lamb. If you can get him for 2 of the people on this list, I would go for it. Give you some depth for a playoff run for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Last player on our list of players to trade away is Deebo Samuel. He's a player that I think he's played a full season of games once in his career. So he's always an injury risk. You got Pearsall, who is coming alive in this offense, looking better and better each week. We got CMC back in the fold. He's healthy. They're gonna use him because that offense is so much better when he is touching the ball 15 to 20 times a game. Deebo has yet to play 90% of the snaps in any game this year. His matchups aren't terrible. They play the Rams week 15, who are the 8th, give up the 8th most points to wide receivers. They're at Miami, who gives up the 27th most points, and then against Detroit, who gives up the 4th. Yeah, I've never really been a huge fan of Deebo in fantasy. He had the one really good year, and he just takes such a beating being like this hybrid, like wide back or whatever they call him. Taking all those hits and getting those rushes and stuff like that is always going to wear you down a lot quicker. And yeah, he's just not somebody that I've ever wanted a part of in fantasy football, but that's just my opinion, and he hasn't really been playing super well this year. I think he's been banged up all year too, so
when the 49ers are playing for a playoff run, they're not going to, like, if Pearsall is fresh, Juwan Jennings is fresh, they're going to save him for the playoffs. So,
yeah,
like the
absolutely.
actual NFL playoffs. They want to win a championship. So
yeah, I mean, just this year alone, he's only scored over 20 points in one game, and that's because he had like a 75-yard touchdown that game.
Mm-hmm.
Missed 2 games. Well, technically he missed 1 game and then started another, but then was sick and then stopped playing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's definitely been more of a bust player this year. He's wide receiver number 35 right now.
He's another player that you could use his name to maybe get something better.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd say that is all the players we're going to talk about tonight. If you have questions about other players, please comment on our video. Whether it's a trade you've been given or what to do with a player, comment on the video. We will respond whether it's a comment or in our next video. Like and subscribe. If you subscribe, you get notifications of when we are live or when we post videos. We've got a whole bunch of other social medias, so Discord, Twitch, X, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. We try to post as much as we can, especially to TikTok. We've got a Discord, though, that's full of people, and we just talk about football. So, yeah, we'll be live again Friday night on YouTube for Friday Night with the Bros. Drink some beer, talk some football, just hang out. So,
Yeah, we always love. We're always live. We always love to have people join in, ask questions. Love to answer anything that you guys may have some questions about. So,
yeah,
we're here to help.
have a good night, everyone.
Peace. Hell yeah.
Shit. No. I was totally at the end of the video. Oh, well.
Hell is not a swear word.
What?
Lace.